Don't be shy, 'cause life won't bring you down too far.
Just finally, September 12th, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. Are we a fan or not of what's going on with this exhibition?
It's very difficult, isn't it, to be a fan of two 50-somethings who were unbelievable. We were all fans of Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. You know, Mike Tyson, I remember exactly where I was when he lost to Buster Douglas. It was the biggest shock ever. I was in America at the time. I was actually at a party. There were American footballers around me crying their eyes out in a frat house. You know, no one could believe that Mike Tyson had lost to Buster Douglas. He was iconic. There was a magnetism about Iron Mike, and there still is. You know, there still is. Everyone wants to see Tyson. You saw him on the pads in lockdown. He looked unbelievable, didn't he? You know, the pads and being in a ring are very different, as we know. And look, I'm very glad that he's not. There was a lot of rumors of maybe Tyson v. Tyson. You know, Tyson Fury, and you know, coming back in with somebody. You know, in the modern era, and I think that I would have said absolutely not. At least. The one sort of saving grace of this is he's finding somebody of his, you know, era or you know, of his age group. Yes, Roy Jones was only just a heavyweight when he won that title. In my opinion, he should have retired after that. He went on too long. He was unbelievable back in the day when he was fighting the likes of Tony and Clinton Woods, what he did in those sort of era. Roy Jones was just almost untouchable. And then obviously, you know, Joe Calzaghe had that win against him. And, you know, and you know, even Joe would admit that, you know, that wasn't the Roy Jones of yesteryear. Yes, it's a fantastic win. He beat Hopkins and Jones and cemented his legacy. Joe is one of the greatest fighters we've ever had. But, you know, Roy Jones, even by then, and then obviously he went into other fights, and it was a bit of a sad story, I think. And Iron Mike, I just watched the Danny Williams fight the other day. You know, Kevin McBride beat him. You know, Danny was unbelievable, that victory that night. But then Tyson loses to McBride, and then he goes, and you know, it's difficult. You know, you hear stories about losing all his money and whatever, but then he's got himself back together. He's got himself right. He's done some films, his comedy show, and he seems in a really, really good place. And now he comes back in a ring. So it's all a bit odd, isn't it? I don't feel that comfortable with it. Look, fighters never quite lose their will, their ambition to fight, do they? They always want to prove something. You know, Carl Froch, even now, you know, I would have shown Joe Calzaghe. You know, he's still got it, and obviously, you know, he's been retired a few years, and they've still got that. But I think the ones, you know, like Lennox never went back, Joe's never gone back, Carl's never gone back. You know, the ones that don't go back and they just accept it. You know, Ricky went back. I think after the Pacquiao fight, he could have called it a day, losing to the two greatest fighters of his generation. He was a superstar, Ricky, but you know, he didn't want to go out on that loss. You know, he suffered a lot from it, and I think he needed that other fight, and it didn't work out. And I think so often the case that doesn't happen, you know, because the reflexes aren't quite there, or too long out the ring, or something. At least it's, you know, an exhibition. At least it's with, you know, they've got each other in a way that it's him and Roy Jones. It's not him and somebody, you know, dangerous of our generation. So, but I don't, it's not really for me, Kugan. I want to remember those guys as I remember them, which was phenomenal, incredible, you know, legends, both of them. And it is a bit sad, but it is one of those that you sort of want to sort of go like that with, isn't it? That you'd sort of peek around the corner and watch it, and you want to know what happened. And, you know, but it's almost one that you condemn to, because it's just doesn't feel right at all. It's a hard one. It's a hard question to answer. What are you thinking on it?
I think, like I said, I've heard two people's opinions about this, or two different views on this. That, I mean, people have said, if they're going to fight, why don't you just fight as opposed to an exhibition? Because, I mean, an exhibition, what's it, a glorified spar, basically, isn't it? I mean, so yeah. Is there any point in that? Is there still, I mean, there's clearly still interest in people watching this, regardless. Of course.
Especially with Tyson, but also the name of Roy Jones too.
Absolutely. So, I don't know. Am I going to watch it? Yeah, probably. Should it be happening? Questionable. So, You know,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But then, you know, when I look Mike in the face and say, look, you know, I mean, I've done many interviews with Mike Tyson over the years, and you know, he's a character, as you know. And you get him on a good day, he's great. You get him on a, would I look him straight in the eyes, you know, and say, I don't think you should be fighting? No, you know, would you?
He's told him that, no. I saw some quotes about his kids are telling him, and I think his response was, quote me if I'm wrong, but you know, what do they know about fighting? You know, it's one of them.
His kids are telling him not to do it.
I don't know, but
if his kids are telling him not to do it, he shouldn't be doing it. You know, there's so much.
His kids will be telling people like that not to do it, wouldn't they?
But it's you know, your family, you know, again, we go back to health and safety. We started this with all about health and safety and we've had to go through. You know, I'm here in the bubble of fight week. We do what we need to do to make it as safe as we can. COVID wise, of course, it's a dangerous sport as it is. All you want, and you know, when the Nigel Benn stuff was coming out, and all the Steve Collins or who would, you know, and I'd be like, I love Nigel Benn, I love Steve Collins, and I'm like, you know, I'm just like, and Collins going, oh, my dad's coming back, and I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love your dad, and I hope he's all right, you know. It's that sort of feel, isn't it? That you just don't want anyone to get hurt. You know, they've gone through it, they've cemented their legacy forever. And you just don't want something to go wrong. And I think that it's not a fight that I like. And you know, I'm sad it's happening. But at the same time, like you, you know, you're probably like that watching it, and yeah, it's a bit of that. And it's sad. You want to remember them for who they are. But then Anthony Joshua was like, good for them. And you know, he was saying the other day, he was like, good for them. And if they want to fight, they should fight. And it's different, I think, if you're a fighter. If you're outside looking in, you want greats to be remembered as greats, and not to have that, you know, that. But it's Mike Tyson, and everyone's interested in Mike Tyson, and he's always going to have that interest. And you know, he's made the decision he wants to do it. So has Roy Jones. You know, Roy Jones has been with Chris Eubank Jr. and he's kept himself in incredible shape. And Tyson looked phenomenal on the pads. And you know, maybe we'll get something that's okay. But it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one for all of us, I think.
Right now.